One of the most daunting things whenever we are starting a new game is there are so many characters and so many different skills to learn and understand. But in this video, I'm just going to break it down super simply in less than 20 seconds per character to help us get started and get rid of that daunting feeling as well. I'm going to start off with the free units and we're going to move around. Feel free to pause the video if you need and rewind, because I'm going to be speaking a little bit faster than I actually would like, just to make this video very concise for us. Now let's start off first with Mr. Dan Heng, who's going to be one of the free characters that a lot of us will start off with. He is a wind type unit who is of course a single target damage dealer in nature because he's of the Hun class. What makes him special is, other than doing a lot of single target damage, he has a slow inbuilt in his kit if he is able to crit. My 7th is a defender class unit who can also be built as in terms of a sub damage dealer, because when she shields a unit she draws aggro, and when the target is being shot when she's being protected by her shield, she gets to follow up with a counter attack. She's an ice preservation class, which means she has a lot of access to a lot of preservation light cones which are more defensive and supportive. A single target destruction class damage dealer with a good normal attack and good AoE attack. Generally most people will want to also transition over a physical MC to a character like Fire MC later on, as physical MC doesn't have too much additional complexity to his or her overall kit. Fire MC on the other hand is a defender, a preservation class fire type unit. And in a sense, Fire MC is good because he or she draws aggro to herself while providing a pretty decent, or maybe a thin, some people will call it, shield to the entire party. Natasha is a healer that is also a free unit to get as well. Natasha does a very good team-wide healing and has a skill also focused on individual healing with a cleanse inbuilt as well. Now Asta is also another free unit in the game that we can get, and Asta is actually known to be a very strong offensive support. What she does is she does a flat amount of speed buffing to your entire party, as well as giving them attack bonuses with her skill, and also having tracers which buff fire type damage. Herta can actually be gotten from the Herta simulation room after you have cleared certain criteria, so it's also a free unit to get. And Herta is an ice AoE DPS in nature. She is very well known for her Guru follow up time to twirl kind of tactics, where if the enemy drops below a certain amount of life, for example 50% or less, she gets to follow up and do damage. Serval is actually from the pre-registration rewards. She's given to us for free. She's a lightning type erudition class, which is also like an AoE damage dealer, very similar to Herta, but in the sense that she doesn't have any follow-up abilities. Instead, a lot of her damage is done in terms of casting her abilities and casting her ultimate. She also works around the shock passive, which also applies a debuff on the target as well. And next up we have another character that is also free. This is Qing Xue. I don't think Qing Xue is from like the Forgotten Hall or Memory of Chaos after we clear a certain amount of milestone. This character is slightly more complex to play, and she has an ability where she draws certain suits. If you are not familiar with Mahjong, think of it like poker in terms of the sets. Once you get certain suits, she gets a certain damage buff and her attacks become enhanced. This character drinks up skill points very quickly, but does very good amount of damage as well. And now that we have done with like the free units, I am catching my breath real quick, but let's now jump real quick into the gacha 4 stars. And if you're finding value in this video so far, do give a like and subscribe for more of such future content. It's the first time I'm trying this kind of speedrun kind of content for a new game that's launching. Hook is a fire type destruction unit, does insane amount of single target, but one of the downsides of Hook is she's relatively slow. It's a she, not a he for this character. Strong single target damage dealer, but relatively slow, and that's something we want to take note of. Arlen is another character of the destruction class, and instead of being slow, this guy is pretty like mid in terms of speed, but very high in terms of damage output. One of the drawbacks of him is he requires you to have a lot of HP manipulation, which means that you either need to sustain him or protect him, as he really likes being functioning at low life. Think of it like as a Hu Tao for those of you who play Genshin Impact. He likes being at lower life and gets damage buffs from being at lower life as well. Now Sampo is probably one of the more complex characters to understand and play, similar to the level of difficulty of Qing Xue, because he manipulates wind shear and damage over time. And damage over time is not as simple to understand as straight up raw damage that is being upfront. I'll be doing more guides in terms of DOT, but basically how he works is he procs his abilities and stacks up wind shear on the enemy while also increasing the amount of damage over time damage that opponents take. He's of the wind nihility class, which means he's based on design a debuffer, but I do think he can also be played as a damage dealer on the side as well, especially when you look at other characters like Kafka. Tingyun is a Lightning Harmony class character who does a lot of damage on her side if you build properly as well. She's known for her energy buffs that she provides a single target of your team as well, and is of course very good if you are focusing on a hyper carry kind of style together with Jingyuan or Sealer. Pella is a Nihility Ice type unit, which is like a debuffing class, and she's commonly known for her AoE defense break. For those of you who come from other turn-based games, for example Epic 7, you will know that defense break is a very solid element, but of course it only comes more into play later on into the game. Susang is similar to Danheng in terms of she is a Hun class unit of the physical element. She's a very independent character with a lot of speed buffs, a lot of weakness breaking specialties, a good single target damage with her own self-action advance. Very solid character, very independent as well. And now that we have touched on the Gacha 4 stars already, we are into the exciting part, and let's talk about the 5 stars. Zila first. Let's talk about the first character that's going to be released in the game, and Zila is a character of a Hun class Quantum type, one of the rarer classes in the game. And Quantum, of course, is a real strong element because when you break the enemy with weakness breaking, you actually push back and delay the enemies while also giving them damage over time. It's a type of weakness breaking. Every element has their own different effects when they weakness break an enemy using that particular element. Zila is very fast because she has a lot of auto advancing herself, and she does a lot of self buffing, especially if she's able to defeat targets as well, working really well in stages where there are a lot of small monsters that she can one shot, act again, and do tremendous amounts of damage. Jingyuan is going to be on the second half, so we're going to talk about him next. Jingyuan is a very strong character in terms of doing very good AoE damage. She's of the Lightning Erudition class, very solid character who does a lot of damage, and he plays around mainly his Lightning Lord passive. It's not the most intuitive, but once you get a hang of it, you'll realize that this character really likes being like a hyper carry where a lot of attention is placed on him, a lot of buffing and protection as well. Next up we have Bronya, another very popular character in the game so far. She's known for her 100% action advancing. What this means in turn-based games is you are actually limited by the turn order in terms of how fast you go determines how many actions you take relative to your opponent, but Bronya mitigates all of that speed effect, and she just pushes your character to the top of the line with her skill ability. This is quite broken because even a very slow unit like Clara or Hook can immediately act as long as Bronya is buffing them up. Not only that, she also has an AoE wide team buffing in terms of crit damage and attack. This character has one of the highest amounts of crit rate buffs in the game, with approaching like 100% very early on, especially in like the first 1-2 weeks. You can realize that you're almost critting every single hit. One of the main reasons is because a lot of passives as well as ultimate ability gives a lot of inbuilt crit buffs. Doesn't like taking damage because if Yanqing takes damage, his passive will go away. So that's one thing that you want to take note. Is of the Ice Hun class as well. Well, it's Imaginary, one of the rare Imaginary units currently as of launch. In my opinion, Imaginary is probably one of the better elements in the game in terms of weakness breaking, and Imaginary Nihility class, well, is exceptionally suited for its role because when you Imaginary break an enemy, you not only delay them similar to Quantum, but instead of doing damage over time like Quantum, you speed down the enemies. And this works very well with his kit because his whole kit revolves around speed downing AoE enemies as well, dealing quite good amounts of damage on the side in an AoE fashion. Next up we have Gepard. He exactly looks like his design. He's a defender type ice preservation, so it's like a defender class unit with the best in class shield. What makes him unique on the other defenders is he revives once if he faints, and of course he draws aggro inbuilt into his kit as well. Clara is a character that's a little bit more complex to play compared to the other characters of the physical element and of the destruction class. This character plays around, unlike the other characters in the game, plays around a counter mechanic. Very similar, I would say, to March 7th in a sense that when her teammates or her take damage, depending on whether her ultimate has been used, she will then launch a very strong counter attack. She has inbuilt damage reduction, a lot of crowd control reduction as well in her kit, and does very solid damage. And next up we have Bailu, a Lightning Abundance class, a healer in the game. There are only 2 as of launch. You can get Natasha or as well as Bailu. Very strong healer in a sense, and of course there's another one coming up, Lota, later on. But Bailu, what makes her special is she does a lot of healing, as well as if you make a mistake and one character faints, she does revive them once per battle. So a very good additional benefit compared to Natasha if you are thinking of using her as well. Next up we have Himiko. Himiko is a very strong damage dealer. There are a couple of tweaks in and out based on the Chinese Bilibili to improve her amount of damage over time that she does. So in the broad sense, she's going to be an AoE damage dealer in terms of a fire type damage. She was known mostly for her very huge numbers. Blade is a character who manipulates his HP. He does a lot of life drain and does a lot of damage as well. He has an inbuilt life steal, especially if he builds up a certain amount of stacks. Very similar to a character like Hu Tao in terms of design if you're from Genshin Impact, allowing you to also heal up, deal a lot of damage, but doesn't work in the sense that he doesn't care whether his HP is low or high. Lota is a healer type unit of the imaginary class. In terms of his design, he is working in a sense that he's more of an offensive healer, and he has an AoE dispel on the units. Lota is a healer in that sense, where if your characters drop down to 50% HP, he has an automatic heal. When he's using his passive ability and it procs, your characters basically heal based on damage that they did. So it's something like giving your whole team lifesteal, quote unquote, in a sense. That is how Lota works in general. Silver Wolf is a character who is a rare character in the game because she drops, not only is she quantum and nihility class, a very rare element by nature, but she is also able to debuff in terms of defense down, attack down, speed down based on like RNG randomness. What makes her special though, and what is the main thing this character stands out, is really her ability to implant weaknesses based on your team composition, which means if you have every single character quantum, you will always be applying quantum weakness on enemies, allowing you a lot more flexibility in terms of your resource allocation in your team. Personally, my favorite character, Kafka. I think that Kafka is not a simple character to understand to play. She's a lightning nihility class by category because she does buff quite a bit of damage over time, but in my opinion she works more of like a DPS in terms of an AoE DPS nature. Does a lot of damage over time buffing in terms of proccing them much more quicker, implementing like shock on the target, and she follows up attack when the enemy is inflicted by shock as well. If you want more in-depth guides in terms of opinions as well, and you like the way I'm presenting information, do click on these videos right here, and I have tons of content on Honkai Star Rail on the channel, so I do encourage you to check it out as well. Thank you so much for watching, and see you in the next video. Boy, I gotta catch my breath right now.